My mom sneered, "You're just a guest in this house. Know your place," then threw my suitcase down the stairs. So I picked it up and said good luck finding another guest that pays your bills for months. I'm 26, and up until a few months ago, I lived with my parents not by choice, but because I was trying to help them out. My dad had been laid off the year before, and my mom's hours got cut, so I moved back into chip-in. I covered the electricity, internet, and even most of the groceries. It wasn't glamorous, but I figured it was temporary. I was working full-time as a web developer and freelancing on the side, so I could afford it. What I didn't expect was how quickly I'd go from being the hero of the household to being treated like an unwanted house guest. At first, everything seemed fine. They were grateful, or at least they pretended to be. My mom would say things like, "We're lucky you're here," or "You're really stepping up, Jake." But that were off fast. After the first few months, the tone shifted. They started making comments, little jabs that didn't seem like much at the time. My dad would say, "You're always in front of that laptop. Don't you ever help around here?" Even though I was paying half the bills, my mom would mutter, "You know you still live under our roof." If I didn't immediately hop to her requests still, I brushed it off. Stress does things to people, I thought. But things kept escalating. I'd buy groceries my own money, mind you, and label a few things I like to keep for myself. The next day, gone. No explanation, just a shrug from my mom and a, "Don't be selfish, Jake." One night, I came home from work late and found my dad using my expensive noise-canceling headphones, the ones I use for freelance meetings. "These were just lying around," he said. When I asked him to please ask next time, he scoffed. "You act like this whole house belongs to you again." I said nothing. Maybe that was my mistake. I kept quiet for too long. Then came the real blow. It was a Friday night. I remember because I was already mentally checked out after a long week of meetings. I walked through the door exhausted and was greeted not with a "Hey, how was your day?" but with a full-on lecture. My mom was standing at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "We need to talk," she said. Now, my mom's version of talking is more like a courtroom cross-examination. She started accusing me of being disrespectful, of acting like I owned the place, of not pulling my weight. I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I'm paying for half the bills. I buy the food. I haven't even asked you guys for anything." And that's when she cut me off. "You're just a guest in this house, Jake. Don't act like you belong here." The words hit me like a slap. Guessed after everything I'd done, I opened my mouth to say something, anything. But I didn't even get the chance. She grabbed my suitcase from the hallway closet, the one I kept packed for work trips, and threw it down the stairs. It bounced off the last step and landed with a dull thud near my feet. "Go stay somewhere you're wanted," she said, like she was shooing away a stranger instead of her own son. I stared at her, stunned. My dad just stood behind her with his arms folded, not saying a word. His silence said everything. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I just picked up the suitcase, walked upstairs, and started packing. I didn't have much, just clothes, my tech gear, some books. But it felt surreal. I packed everything in silence while my heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't angry yet, I was just numb. I kept thinking, did this really happen? Did they really throw me out like that? That night, I quietly loaded everything into my car. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even turn on the lights in the driveway. I just left, drove to a nearby hotel, and booked a room for a few nights. I didn't have a plan yet. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not after that. The next morning, the anger started to creep in. I opened my phone and looked at my banking app. Automatic payments. Every month, I'd been covering their electricity, internet, and half the grocery bill. Hundreds of dollars gone like clockwork. No thank you. No recognition. Just insults in a suitcase down the stairs. So I paused them. Every single one. The power off my account. Internet canceled. Grocery budget reallocated to my own fridge wherever I landed next. I didn't tell them. I didn't need to. They'd find out soon enough. For a while, it was radio silence. I stayed in that hotel for a week, found a short-term rental after that, and started putting together something more permanent. Life felt lighter, quieter. I missed the familiarity of home, sure, but not the hostility, not the feeling of being unwanted in my own family's house. I was finally breathing again. Then about 4 weeks later, it happened. My phone lit up with a message from my dad. Just one sentence. The power just got shut off. No hello? No. How are you? No context. Just that. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back. Guess the guest took the electricity with them. And I put my phone on silent. By the next morning, I had 15 missed calls. A from my dad, 4 from my mom. The rest were a mix of my sister, two of my aunts, and a couple of random relatives I hadn't heard from in months. Apparently, news of the great power outage of suburban nowhere had made its way through the family grapevine faster than I expected. At first, I didn't even check the voicemails. I knew what they'd say before I hit play. Confusion, blame, accusations, maybe a few guilt-trippy lines sprinkled in. I had grown up around these tactics. Emotional baiting was practically a second language in my household, but after everything that happened, I was done translating. Eventually, I listened to one just out of curiosity. It was my mom. Her voice was sharp, high-strung. "Jake, this isn't funny. Your father had to sit in the dark last night. We couldn't even charge our phones. The food in the fridge is going bad, and your sister's coming over for dinner tonight. We're not going to let you sabotage this family just because you're feeling dramatic. Call me back." Sabotage dramatic. I wasn't even surprised. That's how she saw it. Me taking care of my own life was sabotage because it meant I was no longer propping up hers. I didn't reply. I didn't need to because while they were melting down in the dark, I was sitting in my new apartment, feet up on a little IKEA coffee table, sipping coffee in peace. I'd finally signed a lease for a place of my own. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with good lighting and decent Wi-Fi, but it was mine. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like a burden. What's wild is they still didn't seem to realize what they'd done. It wasn't just about the utilities. It was about everything that led up to that night. The gaslighting, the entitlement, the way they twisted kindness into obligation. All those months of me helping, giving, showing up, reduced to don't act like you belong here. And it didn't stop at the electricity. A few days later, my dad texted me again. "Dad, internet's down too. Did you forget to pay again?" Again. There was no again. I never missed a payment in my life. I always made sure they had what they needed on time every time. And now that I wasn't doing it, they acted like it was an oversight. Like I had simply forgotten my duties instead of choosing to stop being their unpaid utility fairy. So I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Eventually I settled on, "That must be hard. I hope you figure something out." Sent it, moved on. A few hours later, my sister called. Now for context, my sister Liz has always been the golden child. She lives 2 hours away and visits maybe 3 times a year, but when she shows up, it's with gifts and big hugs and Instagram captions like nothing like family time. Then she drives off in her Tesla while I'm left sweeping up after dinner. She didn't call to check on me. No. "Hey Jake, how are you?" Just straight into it. "What the hell is going on?" she snapped. "Why are mom and dad saying you shut off their power and Wi-Fi? Are you seriously punishing them just because you got your feelings hurt?" My feelings hurt. I took a breath. "Liz, they threw my suitcase down the stairs and told me to go where I was wanted. So I did." There was silence on the other end. Then a scoff. "You're so dramatic." There it was again. The word of the hour. I didn't argue. I just said, "Look, I'm not paying for people who don't respect me. If that makes me the villain in their story, so be it." She hung up a few minutes later, still pissed. But something about the way she ended the call made me think she wasn't calling just for their sake. Maybe part of her was starting to wonder how things got so bad. I didn't care. I wasn't trying to win her over. I was done trying to win anyone over. A few more days passed. Another voicemail from my mom. This one quieter, less angry. "Jake, I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't you. You don't just walk away from family. You're better than this." That one got to me. I won't lie. For a second, I felt that tug, that old guilt that made me second guess myself every time I stood up to them. Maybe I am being too harsh. Maybe I should just call. But then I looked around my apartment, my own space. No cold shoulders, no ungrateful silence, just peace. And I remembered I'm not the one who walked away. They did. They threw me out, called me a guest, made me feel like a burden for helping them survive. All I did was stop filling the hole they kept digging. It wasn't my responsibility to patch over their pride or to pay penance for being the child they didn't know how to appreciate. That weekend, I finally blocked their numbers. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. I needed space-time, quiet. I left one note on our old family group chat before leaving for good. "Thanks for the reminder. I'd rather be a guest in my own life than a prisoner in yours." And with that, I logged out. But that wasn't the end. Because just when I thought the drama had finally stopped, something happened that made everything explode all over again. I was halfway through meal prepping for the week, headphones in playlist, going chopping vegetables in my tiny but satisfying little kitchen when my phone buzzed. It was an email. Subject: urgent notice of defaulted account. Was from the energy company. At first I thought maybe they'd made a mistake and emailed the wrong person. But when I opened it, I saw that it was definitely addressed to me. The thing was, it wasn't for my current address. It was from my parents' address. I froze. There was a small line in the middle of the message that explained it all. Your name is currently listed as the primary account holder for service at old address. I'd canceled the autopay. I'd removed the card, but I never changed the account name. That meant the overdue bills now racking up penalties were still technically under my name, and if they kept defaulting, the debt would come back to me on my credit. My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought of that. I should have transferred the account entirely before pulling out. Rookie mistake. I opened the company portal and tried to update the name, but I couldn't. Not without the signature of the current residents, my parents, of course. I immediately called the customer service line. And after sitting on hold for what felt like hours, a very kind woman explained that unless the residents submitted a change of responsibility form, I'd remain the official account holder. They could keep racking up unpaid bills in my name if they wanted. And legally the company would keep coming after me. So, let me get this straight, I said, pacing around my living room. They live there, they use the power, and I pay for the consequences. I'm really sorry, sir, she said. And she did sound genuinely sympathetic. This happens more often than you'd think. I hung up, heart pounding. I wasn't angry yet. I was stunned. I had walked away. I had stayed quiet, but now they were dragging me back in through the one thing I forgot to burn the paper trail. So I did what I should have done weeks ago. I drove back not to reconcile, not to explain, just to take care of business. It was strange being back in that neighborhood. I hadn't returned since the night they threw my suitcase down the stairs. My palms were sweaty when I pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same. The porch light was on even in the daylight, a habit my dad had always hated. Ironically enough, because it runs up the bill. I walked up to the door and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, this time harder. Finally, I heard footsteps. The door opened, and there stood my mom. Arms crossed, eyes narrowed like she'd been expecting someone she didn't like. "What do you want?" she asked flatly. I held up the form from the utility company. "You need to sign this. You're using the power. You're living here. You take responsibility." She glanced at the paper like it was offensive. "I'm not signing anything until you explain why you're acting like this." That was it. That was the moment the frustration boiled over. All the silent resentment, the guilt-tripping, the entitlement, it rushed up in my chest and came out before I could stop myself. Why I'm acting like this? You told me I was just a guest. You threw me out like I was a stray. And now you want me to take the blame for the power bill you're not paying. She looked taken aback but recovered quickly. "Don't twist this. We never told you to leave. You chose to walk out, and now you're trying to punish us by cutting us off and making us look like deadbeats to the family." "No," I said, voice firm. "You did tell me to leave. You said go stay somewhere you wanted. So I did. And now I'm telling you, take responsibility. This isn't revenge, it's consequences." I handed her the form again. She didn't take it. Behind her, I saw my dad appear in the hallway, arms crossed, watching. "Of course, Jake," he said. "You're overreacting. You didn't have to shut everything off and make this harder than it needed to be." I laughed, bitter and short. "I didn't make this hard. I made it fair. You want to use the lights, the fridge, the Wi-Fi, you pay for them. That's how adulthood works. That's how respect works." My mom huffed. "This is about more than bills. You're breaking this family." "No," I said, stepping back. "You broke it the night you made me feel like I was nothing more than a tenant in my own home." I set the form down on the doorstep and turned to leave. "Sign it or don't. But if you don't, the next late fee is on you, not me." As I walked away, I could hear her call my name, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove off. Heart racing, but feeling lighter with every mile. And for a while, I didn't know what they'd decide until a week later when I got an email from the utility company. Account responsibility transfer confirmed. No message from my parents, no apology, no acknowledgement, just silence. But then silence was all I ever wanted. Or at least it was until the next family gathering where everything I'd escaped came rushing back and I found out they had a new target, and this time I wasn't going to stay quiet. The next family gathering was Easter brunch. Normally I would have skipped it. Actually, I had every intention of skipping it, but then my cousin Sarah messaged me out of the blue the day before. "Hey," she wrote, "are you coming tomorrow? You should. Something's weird." I stared at her message for a while before replying. I replied, "Weird, like how Sarah texted, 'Your mom's been saying some stuff about you, but also about Zoe. Zoe, my younger cousin. She was only 19, finishing her first year of college, and probably one of the few people in our extended family who'd never treated me like a walking ATM. Sweet kid quiet, always helped clean up after dinners when no one else would. I replied, "What kind of stuff?" Sarah texted. "She's trying to pin the unpaid bills on her." Said Zoe borrowed money from them and never paid it back. That she's been a financial strain lately. Like what I felt my stomach twist. It made sense in the most twisted way possible. They needed a new scapegoat, someone younger, someone less likely to push back. And Zoe was vulnerable. She'd been couch hopping during her spring break because her dorms were closed, and she didn't want to go back home. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen, boiling. They had learned nothing. Nothing from what happened between us. Nothing from the consequences. Nothing from the silence I'd given them. They didn't want reflection. They wanted another target. So I went. Not out of obligation, not out of sentiment. I went because someone needed to. The gathering was at my aunt and uncle's place this year. A big backyard brunch. White plastic tables with pastel tablecloths. Fruit trays from Costco. Folding chairs. Classic family get-together vibe. Everything looked normal. But the moment I stepped out of my car and walked into the backyard, the conversations quieted just a little. Heads turned, eyes followed, and there she was, my mother. Perfectly ironed blouse, hands full with a tray of deviled eggs, smiling like nothing had ever happened between us. As if I hadn't moved out, as if she hadn't told me I didn't belong. She didn't greet me. She didn't even nod. She just went back to setting down food like I wasn't there, but I wasn't here for her. I spotted Zoe sitting alone at a table near the back, scrolling on her phone, earbuds in. She looked up when she saw me, eyes widening slightly. Then she smiled, small but real. "Hey," I said, sitting beside her. "You came," she said. "You okay?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "I mean, yeah, I'm just laying low. Your mom's been kind of weird." I leaned in. I heard. Sarah told me, her face tensed. "They told Aunt Dana that I've been taking money from them, that I owe them a few hundred, but I haven't even seen them in months." "You don't owe them anything," I said firmly. She nodded, but her jaw tightened. "I know, but no one ever says anything when they start talking. People just nod. Even Uncle Gary, and he knows better." I sat back watching the yard. My dad was at the grill. My sister was taking selfies with the kids. My mom was pouring juice into paper cups like a suburban monarch, and everyone was pretending not to notice the tension. That's when I made my decision. I stood up. "Come on," I said to Zoe. "You're not going to sit back here hiding while they trash you to the rest of the family. Jake, trust me." I walked straight to the main table, right where my mom was placing a centerpiece. She looked up just in time to see me pick up the cake knife and tap it against a plate. Clink, clink, clink. A few heads turned. "Hey," I said, raising my voice. "Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say a few words." You could hear the collective sigh ripple through the relatives. I saw my mom freeze mid-step. "I know we don't normally do speeches at Easter brunch," I said, voice calm but clear. "But since we're all here, I figured now's a good time to clear something up." I turned to face them. A few months ago, I moved out of my parents' house. Not because I got a job out of town, not because I fell in love or found a dream apartment. I left because my mother told me I was just a guest in this house. She threw my suitcase down the stairs and told me to go stay somewhere I was wanted. So I did, quietly, respectfully. Now the silence was real palpable. But apparently that wasn't enough, because instead of owning what happened, my parents decided to start telling people I abandoned them, that I cut them off, that I was punishing them. My mother's face was red now. "Jake, this isn't." "No, Mom," I said, voice sharp. "You don't get to control the narrative anymore." I turned slightly and motioned for Zoe to come over. She hesitated, then stood and joined me. I put a hand on her shoulder. And now they're doing the same thing to Zoe, spreading rumors that she owes them money, that she's using them, that she's the problem now. I looked around the yard. I don't care what you all think about me. Maybe you think I'm dramatic. Maybe you think I overreacted. That's fine. But Zoe doesn't deserve this. She hasn't done anything wrong. And if you're the kind of person who hears these stories and just nods along without asking for the other side, then maybe you're part of the problem too. No one spoke. For a solid 10 seconds, the yard was a frozen photograph. Then slowly one of my uncles muttered, "I didn't know it was like that." Another aunt said, "She told me you moved because of a job offer." My mom looked furious. Her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. "Jake, this is not the time or the place." "Funny," I said, picking up my plate. "Because when you threw me out, that wasn't the time or place either." I walked over to the buffet table, grabbed a slice of quiche, and calmly sat back down next to Zoe like nothing had happened. The rest of the brunch was quiet. My parents left early. My sister didn't say goodbye, but Zoe smiled. Not just politely, really smiled, like someone who finally saw the balance start to shift. A few weeks later, she texted me that she got a job at a local bookstore and found a cheap sublet with a roommate. She thanked me for having her back. I told her, always. As for my parents, we haven't spoken since. I heard through the grapevine that they finally had to start budgeting properly. They even picked up part-time jobs. They stopped being the victims when they realized no one was buying it anymore. And me? I'm living my life not as a guest, not as a burden, but as someone who finally decided to stop asking for space and start taking it.